On the third day after my surgery, I went to the bathroom, and near the operating room, I overheard my daughter talking with the hospital director. The words cut through the half-open door like knives. She already signed the estate papers. Tomorrow morning, give her the injection so she doesn't wake up, and 25% is yours. I stood paralyzed in the hallway, clinging to the IV stand. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own daughter, Virginia, the girl I had raised alone after her father abandoned us, was negotiating my death like someone buying fruit at the market. But then I heard something that made it all 1,000 times worse. Dr. Miller's voice responded with a chilling calm. "This isn't the first time we've done this, Virginia. No one suspects anything when a 67-year-old patient doesn't wake up after surgery. We'll say there were complications." I felt my world collapse. It wasn't just my daughter's betrayal. It was a criminal plot. A business of death they had carried out before. Now let me explain how I ended up in that hallway in that moment when I discovered that my own blood wanted to erase me from the world. It all started 3 weeks earlier when Virginia showed up at my house with that smile she always used when she needed something. I was in the kitchen making my famous lasagna, my hands covered in flour, the steam filling the room with the aroma of garlic and herbs that reminded me so much of my own mother. I had spent the whole morning cooking because I knew Virginia loved my lasagna, and it had been 2 months since she had come to visit. "Mom, it smells delicious in here," she said, walking in without ringing the bell, as if she still lived there. She gave me a quick hug, one of those hugs that mean nothing, and sat at the table with her phone in her hand. She didn't even look me in the eye. "I made your favorite," I told her, wiping my hands on my apron. "Want some coffee? I just made a fresh pot." "I don't have much time, Mom. Michael is waiting for me. I came because I need to talk to you about something important." Something important. It was always something important when Virginia came to see me. It was never just to spend time with me, to ask how I was to remember the years when it was just the two of us against the world. I sat across from her, drying my hands that still smelled of oregano and basil. "Tell me, honey, what do you need?" "Mom, I've been thinking about your health." Her voice sounded concerned, but her eyes were still glued to the phone screen. "You've been complaining about stomach pains for months. You need to have your gallbladder removed. I already spoke with Dr. Miller, the director of St. Raphael's Hospital. He's one of the best surgeons in the country, and he owes me a favor." "He can operate on you next week?" "Next week." Everything was already decided without even asking me. "I don't know, Virginia. Surgeries at my age are dangerous. Besides, the pain isn't that bad. I can manage it with my diet." "Mom, don't be stubborn. If you don't have the surgery now, it could get worse. It could turn into something serious." "Do you want me to lose my mother because of your stubbornness?" That sentence hurt more than any gallbladder pain because it sounded like she cared, like she was genuinely worried about losing me. A mother always wants to believe her children love her, even when all the signs say otherwise. "Okay," I whispered, "if you think it's necessary." Virginia smiled, but it wasn't a smile of relief. It was a smile of victory. "Perfect. Oh, and Mom, there's something else. To get admitted to the hospital, they need some documents. You know, medical authorizations, insurance information, that kind of thing. Dr. Miller gave me these papers for you to sign." She pulled a thick folder from her purse and placed it on the table on top of the flour smudges. There were so many pages, small print medical terms I didn't understand. "Shouldn't you explain what I'm signing?" "Mom, they're just standard hospital forms. Authorizations for the surgery, consent forms, nothing important. Trust me." Trust me. Those 2 words a mother should never question. I signed every page where Virginia pointed her finger without reading, without asking. I signed because I believed my daughter was taking care of me. I signed because I thought it was the right thing to do. I signed my own death warrant without knowing it. A week later, I was at St. Raphael's Hospital in a private room on the 3rd floor. Virginia had insisted I needed privacy to recover properly. The room had beige walls, a window overlooking a gray parking lot, and that disinfectant smell that gets into your lungs and never leaves. Dr. Miller came to see me the night before the surgery. He was a tall man, about 50, with perfectly combed silver hair and a smile that showed teeth that were too white. He wore a pristine lab coat, and a watch that probably cost more than my house. Mrs. Helen, it's a pleasure to have you. Virginia has told me so much about you. Don't you worry, the surgery is straightforward. You'll be home in less than a week. Home. How ironic that he used that word when they had already planned for me to never return. The surgery was on a Tuesday morning. I remember the ceiling of the operating room, the bright lights like artificial suns, the oxygen mask covering my face, a nurse's voice telling me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7 before everything went black. I woke up with a dull pain in my abdomen and a mouth as dry as paper. Virginia was sitting by my bed, but she wasn't looking at me. She was texting on her phone, her perfectly manicured coral nails tapping urgently on the screen. "How are you feeling, Mom?" she asked without looking up. "Sore. I'm so thirsty." "I'll tell the nurse to get you some water. You need to rest." "Dr. Miller says everything went perfectly." Perfect. That word also sounded strange coming from her. The next 2 days were a haze of pain morphine and brief visits from Virginia that lasted exactly 15 minutes. Michael came once, stood at the door, asked how I was, with the same emotion one asks for the time, and left. None of my other relatives showed up. Virginia had told them I needed complete rest, that visitors were forbidden. On the 3rd day, I felt a little better. The pain had subsided, and I could get up with help. I needed to use the bathroom, but the nurse wasn't answering the call button. I decided to go on my own, dragging the IV stand with me. The hallway was strangely empty for mid-morning. I walked slowly, each step a small victory. I passed other rooms, heard the murmur of television's coughs from other patients, the soft weeping of someone who had probably just received bad news. And then as I passed near the operating room, I heard Virginia's voice. I stopped. Something in her tone made me stand still, breathe slowly, and listen carefully. She already signed the estate papers. My heart started to beat faster. What papers? What estate? "Tomorrow morning, give her the injection so she doesn't wake up, and 25% is yours." The world stopped spinning. The hallway began to tilt. I gripped the IV stand so tightly my knuckles turned white. This isn't the first time we've done this. Virginia, no one suspects anything when a 67-year-old patient doesn't wake up after surgery. We'll say there were complications. There it was, the confirmation that it wasn't paranoia. It wasn't my imagination. My daughter was planning to murder me, and the doctor I had trusted was her accomplice. My legs gave out. I stood there in that empty hallway, feeling each word from that office burying me a little deeper. I wanted to run, to scream, to break down that door and confront them, but my body was paralyzed by fear and betrayal. "And are you sure she signed everything?" Dr. Miller asked. His voice was so casual, as if they were discussing the lunch menu. "Completely sure. She signed the estate transfer, the power of attorney, everything. My lawyer already has the documents registered. As soon as she dies, the property automatically transfers to my name. $800,000, doctor. It's a huge estate on the outskirts of the city with a colonial house included. $800,000. That was the value of my life to my own daughter. The estate my mother had left me, where Virginia had grown up, where we had planted trees together, where I had taught her to ride a bike. All reduced to a number in a bank account. Michael already has interested buyers," Virginia continued. "People from the city who want to turn it into a boutique hotel. They want to pay in cash, quick and clean." "Perfect," Miller replied. "Then tomorrow at 6 in the morning. That's when the nurses change shifts. Fewer witnesses. I'll inject potassium chloride directly into the IV. It will cause an immediate cardiac arrest. It will look completely natural. I've used this method 4 times before. It never fails. 4 times before. There were others, other children, other families, other elderly people murdered in this hospital while everyone believed it was God's will or complications of old age. And the autopsy," Virginia's voice sounded worried now. "There won't be an autopsy. I sign the death certificate. I'll put down post-operative complications. Age-related heart failure. It's what I always write. The authorities never question my word. I've been the director of this hospital for 15 years. Helen was 67 and just had surgery. It all makes sense. I felt sick. Not from the surgery, but from the ease with which they talked about killing me, as if I were just a piece of paperwork, an obstacle between them and the money. "My brother doesn't suspect anything, does he?" Virginia asked. Then I remembered I had a brother, Stephen, who lived in another state. He didn't even know I was in the hospital. Nobody suspects a thing. Besides, you're the sole legal heir according to the documents she signed. Your brother won't be able to claim anything. I heard a chair scrape. They were getting up. They were about to come out. I panicked. If they saw me there, they'd know I heard everything. Maybe they'd move up the plan. Maybe that injection would come tonight instead of tomorrow. I desperately turned the IV stand and started walking back to my room as fast as my post-op body would allow. Every step was agony. The surgical wound burned. I felt like the stitches would burst, but I couldn't stop. I reached my room just as I heard the office door open. I got into bed, closed my eyes, and tried to control my ragged, noisy breathing. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it from the hallway. I heard Virginia's heels approaching. She entered my room. I lay completely still, pretending to be asleep, praying she wouldn't notice the cold sweat on my forehead, the trembling of my hands under the sheets. "Still sleeping," Virginia muttered. I felt her presence near my bed. I could smell her expensive perfume, that scent of jasmine and vanilla that I once found elegant and now made me sick. She stood there for several seconds that felt like hours. Was she thinking of doing it right now? Was she considering suffocating me with the pillow to speed things up? Finally, I heard her footsteps moving away. The door closed softly. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. Tears started rolling down my cheeks, and I couldn't stop them. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of helplessness, of a betrayal so deep it felt like it had ripped out my soul. How did I get here? At what point did my daughter become this? I remembered the nights she was sick as a little girl, and I stayed up with her putting cool cloths on her forehead. I remembered the times I worked double shifts to pay for her college because her father never sent a dime. I remembered her graduation when she hugged me and told me she owed everything she was to me. Lies. It had all been a lie. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 11 in the morning. I had 19 hours before Dr. Miller came in with that lethal injection. 19 hours to decide whether to lie here and wait for death or to fight. My body was weak. I was fresh out of surgery. I had tubes connected to me, a fresh wound in my abdomen legs that could barely hold me. But I had something more important. I had the truth. And I had 19 hours. I sat up in bed slowly. Every movement was a reminder that my body wasn't ready for what my mind needed to do. I disconnected the oxygen monitor from my finger. An alarm immediately started blaring. A nurse rushed in seconds later. She was young, maybe in her 30s, with her hair in a ponytail and kind eyes. Her name tag said, Amelia. "Mrs. Helen, are you okay? Your monitor disconnected." I looked at her, trying to read in her eyes if she was part of the plan, if she knew what Miller and Virginia had planned. I needed to trust someone, but how could I know who? "I need to talk to you," I whispered. "But close the door first." Amelia looked at me confused, but she did as I asked. She closed the door and came to my bed. "What's wrong? Are you in pain? Do you need more medication?" "I need to get out of this hospital. Now, tonight, and I need you to help me." Her eyes widened in surprise. "Ma'am, you just had surgery. You can't leave." "You could have complications, an infection, internal bleeding. If I stay here, I'm going to die, but not from medical complications. I'm going to die because my daughter and Dr. Miller are going to murder me tomorrow morning to take my property." The words tumbled out desperate. I expected Amelia to think I was delirious from the medication, to call security to sedate me and leave me to my fate. But she didn't. Her face changed. Surprise turned into something darker, deeper. Recognition. "Tell me everything," she said in a low voice, glancing at the door as if afraid someone was listening. "Tell me exactly what you heard." And in that moment, I knew I had found the right person, because in her eyes, I didn't see disbelief. I saw something worse. I saw confirmation. I told her everything, every word I had heard in that hallway. The signed documents, the planned injection, the potassium chloride, the 4 previous times, the $800,000. When I finished, Amelia sat in the chair next to my bed. Her hands were shaking. "My mother died in this hospital 2 years ago," she said, her voice breaking. "She was 71. She came in for a simple hip surgery. Everything went well according to Dr. Miller, but 3 days later she had a heart attack. He said it was complications. That at her age it was normal. He signed the death certificate that same night. There was no autopsy. My sister and I never understood what happened because Mom was fine. She was recovering perfectly." She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. 2 weeks later, my sister sold Mom's house, a huge house in the center of town. It was worth about $1 million. I never saw a cent. My sister said Mom had signed papers leaving everything to her before she died. The silence between us was heavy, thick with shared pain and anger. "Help me get out of here," I begged. "Help me and I'll help you find out what really happened to your mother." Amelia nodded. "My shift ends at 10 tonight. There are fewer staff around then. I'll bring you regular clothes and disconnect your IV. You'll have to walk to the parking lot. Do you think you can do it? I'll walk if I have to crawl." The next few hours were the longest of my life. Every minute dragged on as if time itself knew I was in danger. Virginia came back at 3 in the afternoon with Michael. They walked into my room with faces of concern so fake they made me want to throw up. "Mom, how are you feeling?" Virginia leaned down to kiss my forehead. Her breath smelled of expensive coffee and lies. I had to use all my willpower not to pull away, not to scream in her face that I knew everything. "Tired," I murmured, keeping my eyes half closed. "It hurts a lot. Dr. Miller says that's normal. You'll feel better tomorrow." Michael smiled from the doorway, hands in his pockets, checking his watch as always. Tomorrow. Of course, tomorrow I wouldn't feel anything because I'd be dead. "Do you need anything, Mom? Do you want me to stay with you tonight?" Virginia asked, but she was already checking her phone again. She didn't expect me to say yes. She never expected me to say yes. "No, honey, you go rest. I'll be fine." "Okay, we'll be back early tomorrow." She got up quickly, clearly relieved to be leaving. Michael was already in the hallway. "I love you, Mom. I love you." Those words that once filled my heart now sounded hollow, rotten, like fruit that's beautiful on the outside, but spoiled within. They left. I heard their footsteps fade down the hall, their voices whispering something I couldn't make out, and then silence. I closed my eyes, and the tears came again. I couldn't control them. I cried for the daughter I thought I had and who never existed. I cried for all the years I spent working to give her everything. I cried for the foolish woman who had signed those documents without reading them because she blindly trusted her own blood. But after the tears comes anger, and anger is much more useful than sadness. At 7 they brought dinner, a watery soup that tasted like cardboard and green gelatin that looked like melted plastic. I didn't touch it. I needed to be alert. I needed strength for what was coming. Amelia came in at 8 to check my vitals. There was another nurse with her, an older woman who eyed everything with suspicion. Amelia didn't look at me. She just did her job silently and left. I understood the message. Not yet. We had to wait. 9 o'clock arrived with torturous slowness. I heard the shift change in the hallway, voices saying goodbye, hurried footsteps of people leaving. The hospital grew quieter, darker, as if it knew terrible things happened within its walls when the world was asleep. At 9:30, Amelia came in. She was alone this time, carrying a cloth bag. She locked the door from the inside. "We have 20 minutes," she whispered. "After that, the supervisor makes her rounds, and if she doesn't find you here, all the alarms will go off." She pulled gray sweatpants, a white long-sleeved shirt, and a pair of old sneakers out of the bag. "They're mine. They'll be big on you, but it's the best I could do without raising suspicion." She helped me sit up. The pain in my abdomen was intense, like someone twisting a knife inside me. I took a deep breath. I choked back a moan and let Amelia remove the hospital gown. Seeing my body was a shock. The surgical wound was a red swollen line covered with bandages. I had bruises everywhere from injections and IVs. It looked like a battlefield. "This is going to hurt," Amelia warned as she started to disconnect the IV. She was right. The sting when she pulled the needle out made me bite my lip until it bled to prevent myself from screaming. She helped me get dressed. Every movement was torture. Raising my arms to put on the shirt made me see stars. Bending over to put on the pants almost made me pass out, but I did it. I got dressed as if I were putting on armor for war. "Now listen carefully," Amelia said as she helped me put on the sneakers. "We're going out through the service stairs. They're at the end of the hall near the supply closet. Nobody uses them at this hour. We'll go down 3 floors. I'll take you to my car in the staff parking lot. It's an old white car. It won't attract attention. And after that, I can't go to my house. Virginia probably has it watched. I have a friend, Rose. She lives alone on the outskirts of the city. She'll help us. She's trustworthy, I promise." Rose. The name sparked a memory. Rose Mendoza, who lived in my neighborhood about 40 years ago. Amelia looked surprised. "Yes, you know her. She was my best friend when we were young. We lost touch when I got married and moved away. Fate has strange ways of closing circles. Then she'll be happy to see you. Now let's go. We don't have time." She helped me stand up from the bed. My legs were shaking like jelly. Amelia put my arm over her shoulders and held me firmly by the waist. Like that stuck together, we went out into the hallway. The corridor was dimly lit. Only every third fluorescent light was on to save energy. Our footsteps echoed in the silence. Every door we passed seemed to hide watchful eyes. We reached the supply closet. Amelia opened the door next to it, the one to the service stairs. The air that came out smelled of dampness and neglect. These were the stairs nobody used, the ones that existed only for emergencies or for cleaning staff to move their carts without bothering patients. "Hold on to the railing," Amelia instructed me. "Let's go slow. 1 step at a time." We started down. Each step was agony. I felt the stitches from my surgery stretching like something inside me was going to break. Sweat ran down my back. Halfway down the 2nd floor, I had to stop. "I can't, Amelia. It hurts too much." "Yes, you can. Think about your daughter waiting for you to die tomorrow. Think about Dr. Miller preparing that injection. Think about all the people they killed before you. Are you going to let them win?" She was right. The anger gave me strength again. I kept going down step after step, floor after floor, until we finally reached the ground floor. Amelia opened the door carefully. We were in a service hallway near the hospital kitchen. I could smell reheated food and industrial disinfectant. There was a security guard at the end of the corridor, but his back was to us, looking at something on his phone. "Quick," Amelia whispered. We crossed the hallway and went out a side door that led directly to the parking lot. The cool night air hit my face like a slap. It was October. It was cold, and I was only wearing that thin shirt. But that air meant freedom. It meant I was still alive. The parking lot was poorly lit. Shadows of trees moved with the wind, creating threatening shapes. Amelia led me between the cars until we reached a small white one with a dented rear bumper. "Get in quick," she said as she opened the passenger door. I collapsed into the seat. The pain was unbearable now. I felt something wet on my abdomen. I looked down and saw a red stain spreading on the gray sweatpants. "I'm bleeding," I said in a shaky voice. Amelia saw the stain and turned pale. "Damn it, some stitches must have opened." "Hold on. We're going to Rose's. She'll know what to do." She started the car and we drove out of the parking lot. I looked in the side mirror and saw St. Raphael's Hospital receding. That white building where I had entered trusting they would heal me, which was actually my planned grave. We drove in silence through empty streets. It was almost 10 at night, and the city looked like a ghost town. The streetlights passed by, creating hypnotic patterns. I pressed on my abdomen, trying to stop the bleeding, feeling my shirt soak with warm blood. "How much longer?" I asked weakly. 20 minutes. Hold on. "Helen, we're almost there." 20 minutes. 20 minutes in which I could bleed out. 20 minutes in which the hospital would discover my absence. 20 minutes in which Virginia would get the call saying her mother had escaped. I closed my eyes and tried not to think about the pain. I tried not to think about the blood. Instead, I thought about all the years I had lived being invisible, being the perfect mother, the self-sacrificing woman, the one who always gave and never asked for anything in return. I had spent 67 years pleasing others, putting their needs before my own, believing that was the definition of love. But love doesn't kill you. Love doesn't negotiate your death for money. Love doesn't sign your death warrant with a fake smile. I opened my eyes with new determination. I was not going to bleed to death in this car. I was not going to give Virginia the satisfaction of inheriting my estate. I was not going to let Dr. Miller keep murdering elderly people without consequences. I was going to survive. And then I was going to destroy them. The car finally stopped in front of a small house with a neglected garden. The lights were on inside. Before Amelia could ring the bell, the door opened. A woman my age appeared in the doorway, white hair in a bun, deep wrinkles around eyes I once knew very well. I hadn't seen her in 40 years, but I recognized her immediately. "Rose?" My voice came out broken. She stared at me, and I saw her eyes fill with tears. "Helen, oh my God, it's you." "I need help," I whispered, before my legs gave out and everything went black. I woke up in a bed that wasn't mine, covered with sheets that smelled of lavender and fabric softener. The room was dim, with only a small lamp on the nightstand. It took me a few seconds to remember where I was and why every inch of my body was screaming in pain. "You're awake!" Rose's voice came from a chair in the corner. She approached the bed with a steaming mug in her hands. "You slept for 6 hours. You fainted on my doorstep. You nearly scared me to death." I tried to sit up, but the pain stopped me. Rose helped me, propping pillows behind my back. "Easy now. Amelia cleaned your wound as best she could. A few stitches opened, but we stopped the bleeding. It's not perfect, but it'll keep you alive. Where's Amelia? She had to go back to the hospital before they noticed she was gone, but she'll be back tomorrow after her shift." Rose offered me the mug. "Here, it's chamomile tea with honey. It'll help with the pain." I took the mug with trembling hands. The warm liquid went down my throat like a hug from the inside. "Thank you, Rose. You don't know how much it means that you helped me without asking questions." "Oh, I asked plenty of questions. Amelia told me everything while we were patching you up." She sat on the edge of the bed. Her face showed a mixture of anger and sadness. "Your own daughter, Helen. Your own blood planning to kill you. I can't believe it." I couldn't either, until I heard their words with my own ears. I took another sip of tea, feeling the warmth bring back a little of my humanity. "Remember when we were young, and you told me my biggest flaw was trusting people too much?" Rose smiled sadly. "I remember, and I remember when you met that man, Virginia's father. I warned you he was no good, that he only wanted your money, your estate. You were right. He left when Virginia was 5, took everything he could carry, and never came back. I stopped talking to you after that because I was ashamed to admit you were right." "We were so foolish," Rose sighed. "We lost 40 years of friendship over pride. We're not losing another day." I held out my hand, and she took it. Her fingers were wrinkled like mine, marked by time and work, but her grip was strong. "Rose, I need your help. Not just to hide. I need to stop Virginia and Dr. Miller. I need to make sure they don't do this to anyone else." "I know. That's why I called my son as soon as Amelia left. Your son Fabian is a lawyer. He specializes in elder abuse cases. He's won $1 million lawsuits against hospitals, corrupt families, all kinds of vultures who prey on the elderly." Pride shone in her eyes. "I told him your situation. He's coming first thing in the morning." I felt a spark of hope for the first time since I'd heard that cursed conversation. "You really think he can help me?" Helen, my son, has waited his whole career for a case like yours. A corrupt doctor murdering patients, a daughter committing patricide, forged documents. This isn't just your revenge. This is justice for all the people Miller killed before you." The bedroom door opened and a man in his 40s entered, tall with glasses and a laptop under his arm. "I heard voices. Mrs. Helen, I'm Fabian Mendoza. My mother told me about your situation and I took the first flight from the city. We need to talk." He hadn't waited until morning. He had come in the middle of the night because he understood the urgency. He sat in the chair Rose had occupied and opened his laptop. "First of all, are you in a condition to talk? I need you to tell me everything from the beginning, every detail, every document you signed, every word you heard, everything." For the next hour, I told him my story. Fabian didn't interrupt, just typed notes on his computer with swift fingers. When I mentioned the 4 previous cases, Miller had confessed to his eyes lit up with something that looked like professional hunger. "That's crucial," he said. "If we can prove this is a pattern, that there are more victims, the case becomes federal. It's no longer just attempted murder, it's serial murder for financial gain. Miller could face life in prison. But how do we prove something like that? I just overheard a conversation. I don't have recordings, no physical evidence." Fabian smiled. "That's where my job comes in. First, we're going to get all the documents you signed. I need to see exactly what that paperwork says. I'd bet anything it included a property transfer disguised as medical forms. But Virginia has all those documents. Not all of them. Hospitals keep copies of everything patients sign. It's the law. First thing tomorrow, I'm going to St. Raphael's Hospital as your legal representative and demand access to your medical file. They can't refuse." "What if they tell Miller, 'Let them'? In fact, I want them to. I want him to know you have legal representation now. That will scare him, and scared people make mistakes." Fabian closed his laptop. "But there's something more important we need to do first. We need to report your disappearance from the hospital." "What? No, if we do that, Virginia will know I'm alive." "Exactly, and that's what we want." He leaned forward, his eyes shining with strategy. "Think about it, Mrs. Helen. Right now, Miller and your daughter think you're in that hospital sleeping, waiting for tomorrow morning's injection. But if they find out you've disappeared, they'll panic. Panic will make them act impulsively. Maybe they'll try to run. Maybe they'll start fighting with each other. Panic leaves evidence." Rose nodded. "Fabian's right. Besides, if they don't report your disappearance, it's suspicious. A hospital loses a post-op patient and says nothing. That makes them accomplices." "Okay," I agreed, although the thought of Virginia knowing I was alive terrified me. "What do we do?" "I'll call the hospital in an hour at dawn. I'll say I'm your lawyer and that my client has disappeared from her room. I'll demand they check security cameras, call the police, start a search protocol." "Everything by the book." Fabian stood up. "In the meantime, you need to rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." When he left, Rose helped me lie down again. "Are you scared?" she asked as she turned off the light. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "But I'm also furious, and fury is stronger than fear. That's my Helen. The brave girl I knew so long ago is still in there." I was left alone in the dark, listening to the night sounds of a strange house. Every creak made me jump. Every shadow looked like Virginia coming to finish the job. But also, for the first time in days, I felt something like hope. I didn't sleep much that night. The physical pain was constant, but the emotional pain was worse. I kept replaying every moment of Virginia's life, searching for signs I should have seen. When did she become a monster? Or was she always like this, and I was too blinded by motherly love to notice? I remembered when she was 12 and her pet hamster died. She cried for days, or so I thought. Now I wondered if those tears were real or just another performance. I remembered her wedding to Michael. I had paid for everything because they said they had no money. $20,000 for an event that lasted 6 hours. They didn't even include me in the important family photos. I remembered every forgotten birthday, every unreturned call, every broken promise. The signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. At 6 in the morning, I heard movement in the house. Rose making coffee, Fabian talking on the phone in a low voice. I got up with difficulty, every muscle protesting. I looked at myself in the small bedroom mirror and hardly recognized the woman looking back. Pale, with deep dark circles, messy hair, but my eyes had something new. Determination contained rage, a thirst for justice. I got dressed in clothes Rose had left for me, a long brown skirt and a cream-colored long-sleeve blouse. They were a bit big, but at least they were clean and not stained with blood like last night's. When I came out of the room, Fabian was in the living room with his phone to his ear. He motioned for me to wait. Yes, I understand. A 67-year-old patient just out of surgery missing from her room. This is extremely serious. No, I don't accept excuses. I want to speak with Director Miller immediately. I see. How convenient that he's not available. Then I'll speak with the assistant director. Yes, I'll wait. He covered the phone with his hand and whispered to me. They're in a total panic. They say they checked your room at 6 this morning and you were gone. They've been looking for you all over the hospital for the last half hour. I felt a dark satisfaction imagining Miller getting that news. I imagined his face of horror realizing his victim had escaped. Yes, I'm here. Fabian went back to the phone. Assistant Director Davis, this is attorney Fabian Mendoza, and I represent Mrs. Helen Torres. My client disappeared from your hospital under extremely suspicious circumstances. I demand immediate access to all security footage, her complete medical file, and the names of all staff who had contact with her in the last 24 hours. Furthermore, I want an explanation as to why Director Miller is suddenly unavailable when a critical patient disappears under his supervision. There was a long pause. I could hear a shrill female voice on the other end, though I couldn't make out the words. I don't care about your internal policies. Fabian's voice turned hard as steel. You have 2 hours to gather everything I've asked for, or I will file a lawsuit not only for medical negligence, but for possible involvement in an attempted murder. And believe me, Assistant Director, when the media finds out a private hospital lost an elderly post-op patient, your reputation will be destroyed. 2 hours. He hung up and looked at me with a fierce smile. The game has begun. Fabian's phone started ringing 20 minutes later. It was an unknown number. He put it on speaker so we could all hear. Mendoza. The voice was male, smooth, controlled. I recognized that tone immediately. It was Dr. Miller. Speaking. Who is this? This is Dr. Miller, director of St. Raphael's Hospital. I just learned about the situation with Mrs. Helen Torres. I want to assure you we are doing everything possible to locate her. We have staff searching the entire hospital. We've reviewed the security cameras. And what did you find on those cameras? There was a pause. Nothing conclusive yet. It appears she left through the service stairs around 10 p.m., but we lose her trail after that. How convenient that your cameras work in some places but not others. Mr. Mendoza, I assure you there is nothing sinister here. Mrs. Torres just had surgery. She was probably confused from the medication. It's common in patients her age. She's likely disoriented somewhere in the building. Fabian looked at me and smiled before answering. Dr. Miller, I have some news for you. My client is not lost. She is with me. She is perfectly lucid and has a lot to say about the conversation she overheard in your hospital. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could imagine Miller's face turning pale, his mind racing to calculate how much I knew, how much I had told. I don't know what you're referring to. His voice was tense now, the artificial smoothness gone. I think you do. But don't worry, everything will be cleared up soon, especially when I present the recordings my client made of certain compromising conversations. There were no recordings. It was a complete bluff, but it worked. Wait, attorney, perhaps we can resolve this in a civilized manner. If Mrs. Torres has a complaint about her treatment, we can discuss it. I'm sure there was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Fabian repeated sarcastically. That's an interesting way to call a murder for money plot. That is a baseless and very serious accusation. I could sue you for defamation. Try it. Meanwhile, I have an appointment with the police in 2 hours to file a formal complaint. I'm going to give them all the information about your little business with my client's daughter, And about the other 4 cases you mentioned in your conversation." Another silence. This one was longer, heavier. When Miller spoke again, his voice had changed completely. He was no longer pretending. Now he sounded dangerous. "Attorney, you're making a very big mistake. You're interfering in matters you don't understand. There are powerful people involved in this. People who don't like it when others meddle in their business. Are you threatening me, doctor? I'm advising you to be prudent, for your own good and your clients'. Thank you for the advice. It will be useful when I play it back for the judge. This call is being recorded, by the way." The sound of the call being abruptly cut off echoed in the room. Rose had her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide. "Oh my God. He just openly threatened you." "I know, and it's perfect." Fabian put his phone away. "Desperate people make mistakes. Miller just confirmed he has something to hide. An innocent man doesn't make threats. An innocent man defends himself with facts." My own phone, which had been off since I escaped the hospital, began to vibrate on the table where Rose had left it charging. Fabian motioned for me not to touch it. "Let it ring. Let's see who's calling." It was Virginia. She called 5 times in a row. Then text messages started coming in, which Fabian read aloud. "Mom, where are you? I'm so worried. The hospital says you disappeared. Please answer." "Mom, if you're upset about something, we can talk about it. Just tell me where you are. This isn't funny." "You're sick. You need medical care. Michael and I are looking everywhere for you." "Please, Mom." And finally, "If you don't answer, I'm going to call the police and report you as a missing person. Answer her." Fabian handed me the phone. "But only this. I'm fine. I have a lawyer. Don't look for me." With trembling hands, I typed those exact words and sent them. Virginia's reply came in seconds. "Lawyer." "What do you need a lawyer for, Mom? You're scaring me. What did they tell you? Who put ideas in your head?" I didn't reply. Fabian told me to turn the phone off again. "Perfect. Now she knows you're conscious and protected. That will force her to make a move. She'll probably call Miller. They'll argue. Maybe they'll fight. And when people fight, they say things they shouldn't." "So what do we do now?" I asked. "Now we go to the police, but not the local station. We're going straight to the federal prosecutor's office. I have contacts there, people who take crimes against the elderly seriously." He stood up and started packing his laptop. "Mrs. Helen, I need you to be prepared. They're going to ask you a lot of questions. They'll want every detail. You're going to have to relive that whole conversation you heard." "I'm ready. I also need you to understand something important. Once we file this report, there's no turning back. Your daughter will be arrested. She will face criminal charges. Her life as she knows it will be over. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" I thought about Virginia as a baby, as a little girl, about all the moments I had believed we were truly mother and daughter. I thought about the pain of betraying your own blood. But then I thought about Virginia standing in that office negotiating my death with the coldness of someone buying an appliance. I thought about the other 4 victims Miller had mentioned. I thought about all the mothers, fathers, grandparents who had died in that hospital, believing it was God's will when it was really murder for money. I'm completely sure she stopped being my daughter when she decided to kill me. Now she's just a criminal who needs to pay for what she did. Fabian nodded in approval. "Then let's go. Rose, you can stay here in case anyone comes looking for Helen." "Of course. I have a baseball bat under my bed and I'm not afraid to use it." We left the house through the back door where Fabian had parked his rental car. It was a discreet gray sedan, perfect for not attracting attention. He helped me in. Every movement was still painful, but the anger gave me strength I didn't know I had. As we drove into the city, I looked out the window at the streets I had known my whole life. My neighborhood, the bakery where I bought pastries on Sundays, the square where Virginia played as a child. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. "What are you thinking about?" Fabian asked. "That I spent 67 years trying to be good, trying to be the perfect mother, the woman who never causes trouble, who always forgives, who always understands. And all I got was my own daughter believing she could kill me without consequences. It wasn't your fault. I know, but it still hurts. It hurts to know that being good doesn't protect you, that loving doesn't guarantee being loved in return." We arrived at a large building downtown. Federal offices, the sign said. Fabian helped me out and we entered through thick glass doors that opened with an access card. "I have an appointment with Prosecutor Alan Reed," Fabian told the receptionist. We were shown to an office on the 5th floor. Prosecutor Reed was a man in his 50s, with an impeccable suit and a serious expression. He shook our hands and invited us to sit. "Fabian told me a little about your case on the phone, Mrs. Torres, but I need to hear it all from you directly from the beginning, without omitting anything." And so for the third time in 24 hours, I told my story. But this time it was different. This time it wasn't just venting, it was an official statement. It was the beginning of the end for Virginia and Miller. Prosecutor Alan Reed listened to my entire story without interruption. He took notes in a yellow legal pad, his expression growing graver with every detail I revealed. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled deeply. "Mrs. Torres, what you're describing is far more serious than I imagined. We're not just talking about an attempted murder. We're talking about a criminal organization operating inside a private hospital." He stood up and began to pace his office. "If Dr. Miller really confessed to doing this 4 times before we need to identify those victims. We need to exhume bodies, review death certificates, investigate suspicious property transfers." "How long will all that take?" Fabian asked. "Months. Maybe years for a complete case. But I can get immediate arrest warrants based on Mrs. Torres's testimony and the threatening phone calls Miller made to you this morning." Alan sat down again. "The problem is we need more evidence for the charges to stick. A testimony alone isn't enough. We need something concrete." "The documents I signed," I said. "Virginia said they were already registered. That as soon as I died, the property would automatically pass to her name." "Exactly. Those documents are key." Alan picked up his phone. "I'm sending investigators to the Public Property Registry right now. If those papers exist, we'll find them. I'll also get a warrant to search all the bank accounts of Virginia Michael and Dr. Miller. Money trails always leave a mark." "And what about the other cases?" I asked. "The other 4 people Miller mentioned. Their families deserve to know the truth." "You're right. I'm going to request access to all death records from St. Raphael's Hospital for the last 5 years. We'll look for patterns. Elderly patients, simple surgeries, unexpected deaths, property transfers immediately after death. If we find even 2 cases similar to yours, we can prove it's a systematic pattern." Fabian leaned forward. "Prosecutor, in the meantime, my client is in danger. Miller and Virginia know she's alive and talking. I don't think they'll sit still waiting to be arrested." "I agree. Mrs. Torres, I need to place you in witness protection until we arrest the suspects." "Witness protection? What does that mean?" "It means federal agents will guard you 24 hours a day." "You'll stay in a safe house. You won't be able to contact anyone outside the investigation circle. You won't be able to leave without an escort. It will be uncomfortable, but necessary." The thought of being locked up hiding like a criminal when I was the victim made my stomach turn. But I knew he was right. Virginia had proven she was capable of anything for money. She wouldn't hesitate to finish the job if she got the chance. "For how long?" "Hopefully just a few days. I'm going to move this quickly. I have enough to get arrest warrants this afternoon." Alan pressed a button on his phone. "Martha, get me Judge Fernandez. I need urgent arrest warrants." The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of activity. More agents arrived. They took my official statement on video. They photographed my surgical wounds as evidence of the medical procedure. They had me sign dozens of documents I barely read, trusting Fabian to review every word. In the mid-afternoon, 2 federal agents, a woman and a man, both young and in dark suits, escorted me to an unmarked car. Rose had brought a suitcase with clothes for me, and I said goodbye to her with a long hug. "You're going to be okay," she whispered in my ear. "You're stronger than you think. Thank you for everything, Rose, for taking me in, for believing me, for not abandoning me. We've been friends since we were 10 years old. Helen, 40 years of not speaking doesn't change that. I would never abandon you." The safe house turned out to be a small apartment in an anonymous building on the outskirts of the city. 2 rooms of basic kitchen windows with thick curtains that had to remain closed at all times. The agents took turns guarding the door, one inside and one in the hallway. That first night in the safe house, I couldn't sleep. Every noise made me jump. Every shadow looked like Virginia coming for me. I sat on the sofa staring at the ceiling, thinking about how my life had completely changed in less than a week. A week ago, I was just an old woman living quietly in her house, making lasagna, watching soap operas, waiting for calls from a daughter who rarely called. Now I was a protected witness in a federal criminal case, my own blood facing attempted murder charges. My phone, which the agents had checked and approved, vibrated with a message. It was Fabian. Good news. We found the documents at the registry. Just as we suspected, Virginia registered a transfer of property upon death. The papers you signed weren't medical forms. They were legal property transfer documents. This proves premeditation. We also found 3 similar cases at the hospital in the last 4 years. Elderly patients, simple surgeries, sudden deaths, immediate property transfers. The arrest warrants are signed. Tomorrow at dawn, they will arrest Virginia Michael and Miller simultaneously. I read the message 3 times. Tomorrow my daughter would be arrested. Tomorrow the world would know she had tried to murder her own mother for property. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt relieved. But all I felt was a huge void where my mother's heart once was. I replied, "Thank you, Fabian, for everything. Rest, Mrs. Helen. Tomorrow your justice begins." But I didn't rest. I stayed up all night imagining the moment of the arrest. Would Virginia scream? Would she cry? Would she try to deny everything? Or would she finally show her true unmasked face? At 5 a.m, one of the agents brought me coffee. "Prosecutor Reed authorized you to watch the news if you want. The arrests will begin in an hour. It will probably be on all the channels." I turned on the TV and waited. The morning news showed the weather, traffic, unimportant stories. And then at 6:30 a.m, the screen switched to a special report. Federal operation at private hospital. Director arrested for murdering patients. My heart beat faster. There was St. Raphael's Hospital on the screen, surrounded by patrol cars with flashing lights. Federal agents entering in formation. And then the image I had been waiting for and dreading at the same time. Dr. Miller coming out of the hospital in handcuffs, his white coat now wrinkled and stained, his panicked face captured by dozens of cameras. He was no longer the elegant man with the perfect smile. He was a criminal on display for the world. Dr. Miller Salazar, director of St. Raphael's Hospital, was arrested this morning, accused of multiple murders of elderly patients for financial gain. According to prosecution sources, he operated a criminal network that included relatives of the victims. The image then changed to another scene, a house in a neighborhood I recognized. Virginia's house, agents knocking on the door, Michael opening it in his pajamas, confused. And then Virginia appearing behind him and her face when she saw the handcuffs. That face will be etched in my memory forever. It wasn't fear, it wasn't surprise. It was pure rage. Rage that her plan had failed. Rage at being discovered. She screamed something the cameras didn't catch clearly, but I knew what she was saying. She was cursing. She was blaming me. Even in her moment of defeat, I was the villain of her story. I watched the arrests replayed on every news channel. Each station had a different angle, but the story was the same. A respectable hospital turned into a scene of murder for money. A daughter who tried to kill her mother. A doctor who betrayed his Hippocratic oath. My name didn't appear in the initial news reports. Prosecutor Reed had protected me, referring to me only as the surviving victim who exposed the criminal network. But I knew it was only a matter of time before my identity came out. In small towns like ours, secrets didn't last long. Fabian arrived at the apartment that afternoon with a tired smile and a thick folder under his arm. "We have more than we expected," he said, dropping onto the sofa. "When they arrested Miller, he tried to make a deal. He offered to provide information on other cases in exchange for a reduced sentence." "And what did he say?" "He confirmed the 4 previous cases. He gave us names, dates, amounts. He even kept records. Can you believe it? He had a hidden notebook in his office with everything documented. Amounts he received, properties transferred, methods used. The man is a sociopath, but he's also meticulous. Why would someone keep evidence of their own crimes? Ego, control, or maybe as insurance in case his partners tried to betray him. Fabian opened the folder. Here are the confirmed victims. Mr. Stephen Vargas, 72 years old. Died after hip surgery. His niece inherited a house valued at $500,000. Mrs. Amelia Reyes, 70 years old. I stopped him. You said Amelia Reyes? Yes, do you know her? She's the mother of the nurse who helped me escape. Amelia told me her mother died in that hospital, and she always suspected something was wrong. Fabian closed his eyes, processing the information. So, Nurse Amelia not only saved you, she used you to avenge her own mother. Brilliant and understandable. Where is she now? Did they arrest her too? No. She cooperated with the investigation from the beginning. In fact, she went to the prosecutor with additional information about irregularities at the hospital. She's being treated as a protected witness just like you. I felt relieved. Amelia didn't deserve to be punished for helping me. She had lost her mother to the same greed that almost killed me. And Virginia? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. What did she say when they arrested her? Fabian hesitated. Are you sure you want to know? I need to know. She denied everything. Said you were senile, that you were making up stories, that the documents you signed were legitimate, and you knew exactly what you were signing. She blamed Dr. Miller for manipulating her, said he convinced her that you wanted to die, that you were suffering, and it was an act of mercy. The words hit me like punches. Even now caught exposed, Virginia continued to deny her guilt. She continued to try to paint me as the crazy one, the confused one, the liar. And Michael? He broke down in the first hour of questioning. He confessed everything, said Virginia planned everything for months, that she was the one who contacted Miller, who researched his previous cases, who convinced him to include her in the next plan. Michael says he was just following orders, that he was afraid of Virginia. Afraid of Virginia. Apparently your daughter has a temper she kept hidden. Michael showed pictures of bruises, threatening messages. He says she controlled all the money, all the decisions. That if he didn't cooperate, she would leave him with nothing. A twisted part of me felt something like satisfaction. Virginia had spent years making me feel small, insignificant, dramatic. Now the world saw who she really was. The trial will be in 3 months, Fabian continued. Miller has already pleaded guilty in exchange for testifying against Virginia. Michael will also cooperate. With their testimony plus yours plus the documentary evidence, Virginia will face 25 to 30 years in prison. 30 years. My daughter would spend the rest of her useful life in a cell. I should feel victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. The following days were strange. I lived in that small apartment, protected but a prisoner. Rose visited me twice a week, always escorted by agents. She brought me homemade food magazines, neighborhood gossip that no longer interested me. People are talking, she told me on one of her visits. Some say you're brave. Others say a mother should never put her daughter in jail no matter what she's done. And what do you think? I think you did what you had to do, and I think the people criticizing you weren't in that hallway listening to their own daughter negotiate their death. Social media exploded when my name finally came out in the news. There were 2 clearly divided camps. Some called me a hero, a survivor, an example of strength. Others called me a traitor, an unnatural mother, a bitter old woman making up stories for attention. Virginia had managed to get some journalists to publish her version. Senile mother falsely accuses loving daughter. One headline read, "Family misunderstanding ends in legal tragedy," said another. Fabian warned me not to read the comments, but I couldn't help it. I needed to know what people were saying, how they saw me. Mothers always exaggerate. I'm sure the daughter was just trying to help. Old people forget things. She probably signed everything willingly and now doesn't remember. How sad that a family is destroyed over money. They should forgive each other and move on. Every ignorant comment enraged me more. Forgive, move on. as if planning a murder was a disagreement over where to spend Christmas. But there were also other messages. Hundreds, thousands of women sharing their own stories. Daughters who had stolen from their mothers. Sons who had abandoned their parents in horrible nursing homes. Families torn apart by inheritances, by greed, by a lack of real love. "Thank you for being brave," one woman wrote. "My sister tried something similar with my father. I didn't have the courage to report her. He died believing his daughter loved him." "You saved lives," another wrote. "If you hadn't spoken up, Miller would still be killing elderly people without consequences." Those messages gave me strength. They reminded me why I had agreed to testify, despite the pain, despite the public shame, despite knowing I would lose my daughter forever. I hadn't really lost her. I never had her. The Virginia I loved, the one who existed in my memories and hopes, was never real. She was an illusion I had created because I needed to believe my sacrifice had been worth it. A month after the arrest, Fabian came with unexpected news. "The families of the other victims want to meet you, specifically Nurse Amelia and her siblings. Would you be comfortable meeting them?" The meeting was arranged at the prosecutor's office. It was a neutral, safe space with enough privacy to share grief without spectators. Amelia arrived with 2 other people. A man in his 40s who introduced himself as her younger brother, and an older woman who turned out to be her aunt. They all had red eyes from crying so much. "Mrs. Helen." Amelia hugged me tightly. "Thank you. Thank you for having the courage I didn't have." "You saved my life, Amelia. I should be thanking you." "When my mother died, I knew something was wrong. I felt it in my bones, but I had no proof, no way to prove it. My sister had manipulated everything perfectly. Her tears were flowing freely now. I spent 2 years hating myself for not doing anything. And then you came along and I heard your story, and I knew God was giving me a second chance." Her brother spoke then. "Our older sister, the one who inherited everything, fled the country when the arrests were announced. She's somewhere in Europe spending Mom's house money, but at least now we know the truth. We know Mom didn't die of natural causes. She was murdered, and even though we can't bring her back, we can honor her memory by making sure Miller pays." The 3 months leading up to the trial passed in a strange haze of legal preparations and therapy. Prosecutor Reed insisted I see a psychologist specializing in family trauma. At first I resisted. I wasn't crazy, I didn't need therapy. But Fabian convinced me. "It's not because you're crazy, Helen. It's because no human being should process what you've been through alone. You need help to heal." The doctor's name was Patricia. She was a woman in her 50s, with a soft voice and infinite patience. In our first session, I just cried. I cried for 2 hours straight, releasing decades of pain I had stored up, pretending to be strong. "Tell me about Virginia when she was a child," she asked in the 3rd session. And so I began to dig through memories I had buried. I remembered things I had conveniently forgotten, like when Virginia was 8 and drowned the neighbor's cat because it meowed too much. I had excused it as a childhood accident. Or when she was 15 and stole money from my wallet. And when I confronted her, she made me feel guilty for not trusting her. Or when she turned 21 and asked me to co-sign a loan she never paid, ruining my credit. The signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them because accepting them meant admitting I had failed as a mother. "You didn't fail," Patricia told me firmly. "Virginia was born with something broken inside. Some people simply lack empathy. You can be the best mother in the world and still raise someone incapable of genuine love. It's not your fault." Those words freed me from a guilt I had carried without knowing it. It wasn't my fault. I had done the best I could with what I had. The rest was Virginia's responsibility. Meanwhile, the case grew. Prosecutor Reed uncovered 2 additional victims, bringing the total to 7 elderly people murdered in 5 years. Each family had the same story. Simple surgery, unexpected death, quick property transfer, Dr. Miller signing certificates without autopsies. The hospital faced million-dollar lawsuits. Several staff members were fired for negligence. The board of directors resigned en masse. St. Raphael's Hospital, which had been a respected institution for 30 years, was now synonymous with corruption and death. 2 weeks before the trial, I received a letter. It came from the prison where Virginia was awaiting trial. Fabian handed it to me with a serious expression. You don't have to read it if you don't want to. But I needed to read it. I needed to see if she would finally show some remorse, some humanity. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. The handwriting was Virginia's, that perfect script I had taught her when she was 6. Mom, I hope you're proud of yourself. You destroyed our family over a misunderstanding. All I did was think about your future, to make sure you didn't end up alone and abandoned in a horrible nursing home. But you, in your senile paranoia, misinterpreted my intentions. You hired expensive lawyers, publicly humiliated me, took everything from me. Now I'm in prison while you play the victim for the cameras. I hope you can live with that guilt. I hope that when you're really dying alone because you have no family left, you remember this moment and regret it. Your daughter who once loved you, Virginia. I read the letter 3 times, looking for even one word of apology, one acknowledgement of what she had done. There was nothing. Just manipulation, gaslighting to the very end, trying to make me feel guilty for surviving. What does it say? Fabian asked. It says she's still the same person who negotiated my death. It says she's learned nothing. I tore the letter into small pieces. And it confirms that I made the right decision. The day of the trial arrived with a gray sky threatening rain. I wore a dark gray pantsuit that Rose had helped me pick out. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just an old woman seeking justice. The courtroom was packed. I recognized families of the other victims, journalists with cameras, curious onlookers who wanted to see the spectacle. And there at the defense table was Virginia. She had dressed in a pale pink dress, her hair in a low ponytail, minimal makeup. She looked young, vulnerable, innocent. It was a calculated performance to generate sympathy. Our eyes met for a second. I expected to see hatred in her eyes, or at least rage. But what I saw was worse. Indifference. She looked at me like you look at a stranger on the street, as if I were irrelevant. The judge entered and we all stood. He was an older man, about 70, with a stern expression. He sat down and the proceedings began. Prosecutor Reed presented the case with surgical precision. He showed the forged documents, the bank transfers, the testimonies of Miller and Michael. He projected on large screens the conversations Virginia had had with Miller, reconstructed from recovered phone records and emails. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Reed said in a firm voice, this is not a case of a family misunderstanding. This is not a concerned daughter making difficult decisions for her sick mother. This is premeditated murder motivated by greed. Virginia Torres planned, organized, and nearly executed the murder of her own mother for a property valued at $800,000. And when her plan failed, she showed no remorse. She showed rage at being discovered. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand with trembling legs. I swore to tell the truth on a Bible that felt heavier than I expected. The prosecutor guided me through my story. Every question was a wound reopening. I described the surgery, the hallway, the exact words I had heard. My voice broke several times, but I didn't cry. I wouldn't give Virginia the satisfaction of seeing me weak. Mrs. Torres, Reed said, do you have any doubt that your daughter was planning to kill you? No doubt at all. And how do you feel about that? The question took me by surprise. I looked at Virginia, who was watching me without expression. I feel betrayed. I feel furious, but most of all, I feel free. Free from the illusion that I ever had a daughter who loved me. The truth hurts, but the lie hurts more. Virginia's lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit, tried to discredit me during cross-examination. He suggested my post-op medications had caused me to hallucinate. He suggested my age made me unreliable. He suggested I had misinterpreted an innocent conversation. Mrs. Torres, isn't it true that you voluntarily signed the transfer documents? I signed what my daughter told me were medical forms. She lied to me. Or maybe you didn't read carefully and are now looking for someone else to blame. I read with the trust of a mother who believes in her daughter. That was my only mistake. Isn't it possible that the conversation you claim to have heard was about something completely different, that your mind, affected by the trauma of surgery, created a narrative that didn't exist? I leaned toward the microphone. Young man, I heard my daughter offer Dr. Miller $200,000 to inject me with potassium chloride while I slept. I heard the doctor confirm he had done it 4 times before. I was not hallucinating. I was not confused. I was lucid and terrified. And your client knows exactly what she said because Dr. Miller has already confirmed everything under oath. The lawyer had no answer for that. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Testimonies, evidence, arguments. The families of the other victims also testified, each story more heartbreaking than the last. Finally, the jury retired to deliberate. They told us it could take days. It took 4 hours. When they returned, their faces said it all. On the charge of attempted first-degree murder, how does the jury find the defendant guilty? On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how does the jury find the defendant guilty? Guilty on all counts. 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. Virginia didn't react. She just sat there staring ahead as if this were happening to someone else. Even in her defeat, she showed no real emotion. But I reacted. I cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. Justice. Finally, justice. 6 months after the trial, I was finally able to return to my house. The estate Virginia had tried to steal from me was now completely mine again, with legal documents no one could question. But when I crossed the threshold, I didn't feel the relief I expected. The house was full of ghosts of memories of a life that no longer existed. Rose helped me to clear out Virginia's things that were still in her old room. Photos, clothes, school trophies. Everything went into boxes that I donated without a second glance. I didn't need reminders of a person who was never real. "What are you going to do now?" Rose asked, as we drank coffee in the kitchen that I had once filled with the smell of lasagna. "Live," I answered simply. "For the first time in 67 years, I'm going to live for myself." And I did. I sold part of the estate, the farthest part that only collected weeds and bitter memories. With that money, I did 3 things I had never allowed myself to do. First, I created a legal fund for elderly victims of family abuse. Together with the families of Miller's other victims, we established a foundation that offered free legal representation to elderly people being manipulated or robbed by their own children. We named it the Helen Hope Foundation, and in the first 6 months, we helped 27 people recover their property and dignity. Second, I fulfilled a dream I'd had since I was a child but had always postponed due to responsibilities: traveling. I bought a plane ticket to Europe and spent 3 months exploring Spain, France, and Italy. I walked through ancient streets, ate food I couldn't pronounce, sat in cafes, watching life go by. For the first time, nobody needed anything from me. I was gloriously free. In Rome, I met a group of women my age, all traveling alone for different reasons: divorces, widowhood, ungrateful children. We became instant friends, sharing stories and wine on terraces overlooking the Colosseum. One of them, a Spanish woman named Mercedes, told me something I'll never forget. "We spend the first half of our lives being what others expect. The second half is for being who we really are." She was right. I had spent 67 years being the good mother, the obedient wife, the woman who never caused trouble. The last years of my life would be different. Third, when I returned home, I transformed part of the estate into a shelter for older women escaping abusive situations. Not a nursing home, but a temporary home where they could recover, receive legal counseling, and plan their next steps. I hired Amelia, the nurse who had saved me, as the medical coordinator. "This is what Mom would have wanted," Amelia told me the day we opened the shelter. "For her death to have meaning, to save others." The shelter was called Renaissance House, and the demand was immediate. There were so many trapped women, so many stories like mine. They arrived scared, broken, convinced they deserved the mistreatment. They left strong, informed, ready to reclaim their lives. One afternoon, a year after the trial, I received a letter. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but the return address said, Federal Women's Prison. For a moment I thought it was from Virginia, but the name was different. Michael Torres. I hesitated to open it, but curiosity won. Mrs. Helen, I know I have no right to ask anything of you after what I did. I accepted my 15-year sentence, and every day I carry the guilt of being an accomplice. But I need you to know something. Virginia manipulated me as much as she manipulated you. I was her puppet. I was terrified of contradicting her. That doesn't excuse me, but it's the truth. I testified against her not for revenge, but because I finally had the courage to tell the truth. I will never expect your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that what you did, exposing all of us, saved more lives than you can imagine. There are 3 people in this prison who are also here for planning to kill their elderly parents. Your case opened an investigation that caught them. You are a hero even if you don't feel like it. Respectfully, Michael. I folded the letter and put it away. I didn't forgive Michael, but I understood that he had also been a victim in his own way. Virginia had that talent, turning everyone around her into either accomplices or victims. The media was still interested in my story. I turned down most interviews, but accepted one with a show about women survivors. The interviewer asked me something no one else had dared to. Do you ever miss her? Miss your daughter? I thought long and hard before answering. I miss the daughter I thought I had. I miss the illusion. But the real person, Virginia, I don't miss her, because that person never loved me, and you can't miss what you never had. Has she written to you? Have you spoken since the trial? She wrote to me once, blaming me for everything. I never replied. I have nothing to say to her. She made her decisions. I made mine. We are nothing to each other anymore. If you could say something to other women in similar situations, what would it be? That blood doesn't mean loyalty. That being a mother doesn't mean accepting abuse. That it's okay to walk away from toxic people, even if they're family. That surviving isn't selfish, it's necessary. And that life after betrayal can be beautiful if you have the courage to rebuild it. 2 years later, on my 70th birthday, I threw a party at the estate. Not a small, quiet celebration like the ones I'd had before. I invited all the women who had been through Renaissance House, the families of Miller's victims, Fabian and his family, Rose, and her children. There were over 100 people in my garden, eating, laughing, celebrating life. Amelia gave me a gift, a photo album of all the women we had helped. Each page had a photo and a message of gratitude. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I looked through it. Thank you for teaching me I'm not crazy. Thank you for giving me courage. Thank you for proving we can start over. See, Amelia said, your pain was not in vain. You saved all these lives. That night, after everyone had gone, I sat alone on the porch watching the stars. I thought about the long road I had traveled since that hospital hallway, where I heard the words that changed my life. From the terror of that night to the peace of this moment. It hadn't been easy. There were nights of crying, days of doubt, moments when I questioned if it was worth destroying my own daughter. But then I remembered that she was already destroyed on the inside. I only exposed the truth. And the truth, though painful, had set me free. I looked at my reflection in the window. A 70-year-old woman with wrinkles earned from experienced silver hair, I no longer dyed tired but peaceful eyes. I was not the woman who had entered that hospital 2 years ago. That woman had died in that hallway. This woman was new, reborn, free. And this woman finally was ready to live every remaining day on her own terms, without guilt, without apologies, without fear. Because I had survived the worst a mother can face. And if I survived that, I could survive anything. The rest of my life would be mine alone, and that I discovered was the best gift I had ever given myself. The story of how my daughter tried to kill me had become the story of how I finally learned to live. And if anything good came from all that darkness, it was this: I inspired other women to reclaim their lives too. One by one, we were rewriting the rules. We were no longer the silent women who accepted everything to keep the peace. We were warriors, survivors, phoenixes rising from the ashes. And I, Helen Torres, 67, when I almost died, and now 70 and full of life, was living proof that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to be free.